speaking, he's really the one speaking. But before we do that, I just want to make sure, just by one person indicating, for example, that you can hear me. Can anybody hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I will then.
We hear you clear.
Fantastic. So I will then. It looks like my own connection works better than what we have here. So I would hand it over to him. Please stand by.
Thank you very much, Shyllon. I want to present a biography of Professor Folarin Olawale Shyllon. This will lead us into other presentations by eminent personalities that are gathered at this forum. Folarin Olawale Shyllon was born on the 23rd July 1940 at Sango, Ibutimeta, Lagos. His parents were the late Mr. Festus Oladun Shyllon and the late Mrs. Felicia Ajayi Shyllon. Okay. Festus Shyllon was from Ake in Abeokuta, Ogun State, and worked through to retirement with Nigerian Railways. Through his father, Folarin hailed from the Shobulu and Ogufayo lineage of the Laron ruling house of Ake in Egbaland. Felicia Shyllon was a petty trader from Agbo Egba in Ibutimeta, now Lagos State. Folarin, the second of 5 children, grew up in the family home at 82 Simpson Street, Ibutimeta in Lagos. His early life was delightful in the company of his brothers Oladapo and Olatubosun, and his sisters Ajibola and Gimishola. The Christian faith was essential to the Shyllon's household from Folarin's childhood. He was raised in the Christian tradition of the African Church at his family church, African Church Cathedral Salem, Freeman Street, Ibutimeta, Lagos, where his father, Festus Folarin Shyllon, was the People's Warden from 1947 to 1950. Folarin was a pioneer member of the Youth Christian Fellowship, which was inaugurated on Sunday, 21st June 1953, and emanated from the choir song, and in particular among the treble boys. He was in 2013, where he was recognized along with others. Folarin became a member of the Chapel of the Restoration University of Ibadan, following his employment at the University of Ibadan. He raised his family in this Christian environment. His preference was for the early morning service on Sundays. Prior to his retirement from the University of Ibadan, the Shyllon family, at the behest of Mrs. A.K. Shyllon, joined the Anglican Church of the Ascension, Ashorin Estate, Akubo, close to their retirement home in 2005. Professor Shyllon was a member of the Men's Forum of the Church, and they participated actively in the activities of the forum. However, he still maintained his association with the Chapel of the Restoration, University of Ibadan, driving all the way to the University of Ibadan to attend the early morning Sunday service before joining the regular service at the Anglican Church of the Ascension, Ashorin Estate, Akobo, Ibadan. His faith in God was absolute. He received the first strength and courage in the Lord Jesus Christ, underground his sinking sand. Folarin attended Yaba Methodist School for his primary school education from 1946 to 1955 and Eko Boys High School in Moshin, Lagos from 1956 to 1960 for his secondary school education. Although 60 boys started secondary education at Eko Boys High School, Folarin was one of the 15 that ultimately completed their studies with the Cambridge West African School certificate. He was a brilliant student by all accounts from his surviving classmates, especially in subjects in arts and humanities. He was a gifted student in history. He was a recipient of a Shell Oil Company Prize for exceptional writing through a national essay competition for secondary school students, a precursor to his future career.
He said he got a Shell Oil.
Later in life, Folarin treasured his membership of his class set of Eko Boys Old Boys Association, Ekuba, of which he was an active member. After his secondary education, beginning in 1961 and for a brief period, he joined and worked for the Lagos Town Council as a clerk. In 1962, he resigned and traveled to London, England for further education. His pre-tertiary education included a year at the Kingston College of Further Education, Kingston-upon-Thames, Surrey, England, from 1962 to 1963. He completed his education at King's College, University of London, where he received a Bachelor of Laws LLB degree in 1966 and a Master of Laws LLM degree in 1967. Personal life. Shortly after his return from England, Folarin met Adeola Kukurola Shyllon, nee Shonaike. At the time, Adeola Shyllon was a Liberian in the Federal Civil Service. They got married in 1976 and enjoyed 45 years together as a couple. Folarin and Adeola made Ibadan their home with their 4 children, Onyola Shyllon, Olayemi Shyllon, Ololade Shyllon Adeyoluwa, and Olamide Shyllon. Folarin's parents and sisters predeceased him. His wife, children, 2 brothers, and 7 grandchildren are all surviving. Many fondly remember him as a brother, husband, brother-in-law, father, father-in-law, uncle, grandfather, great-uncle, teacher, mentor, and friend. His values of integrity, humility, and compassion remain the North Star for
reception is not very good.
Family, friends, and professional.
Would you sit down?
No.
We don't have to wait.
He needs Miss Graham to teach him some English. Put your tongue between your teeth. Grandfather.
Like his values
You were coughing a lot last night.
examples
I was talking about
embrace his passion for the professional career.
and you coughed.
London. Folarin Shyllon for race relations in London. In writing,
Did one?
Something race relation in London. So many cars.
That's the company
there, you
in
know.
Rochester. See, section is gone, and then you come back.
So this is the man speaking. Well, this is the picture of the man.
I think so.
Well, I think Dr. Shyllon's phone there's feedback. And can we all mute ourselves, especially when we are not, can we all mute ourselves so that there's no feedback, so the person who is speaking, everyone can hear? Sorry.
Oh dear. Sorry.
Yes, John, you can go on, please. We seem to have lost John, who is moderating. Let me see if I can.
I think he had mentioned two people that would speak first. Maybe they should be invited to speak now.
We seem to have lost all forms of communication.
Well,
I think those who are to speak will be myself and Chief Shyllon. I think Chief Shyllon is.
We simply can't hear anything again.
well, if we go, I hear you very loud and clear.
So,
But we more than speaking, we need a moderation.
For over 50 years, Folarin and Shyllon worked tirelessly to prevent the illicit trafficking of cultural property and document. He received international recognition for his scholarship in African studies, cultural heritage law, and intellectual property law, among many other areas, as well as participated in various committees and advisory boards. He served on the editorial boards of the African News, Journal of the Institute of African Studies, University of Ibadan, Ibadan University Law Review as editor-in-chief, International Journal of Cultural Property and Art, Antiquity and Law. He advised the governments of African states and was instrumental in working with them to implement the UNIDROIT UNESCO model provisions on state ownership of undiscovered cultural objects. He worked closely with Nigeria's Ministry of Information and Culture, the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, and the National Archives. He was vice chairman of the subsidiary committee of the UNESCO Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural property. He was UNESCO's consultant to some African and Caribbean countries to improve their excellent cultural heritage laws. Until his passing in January 2021, he was chairman of the Nigerian chapter of the UNESCO Memory of the World Committee. These roles are examples of his wide-ranging service and commitment to cultural property protection. There was wide breadth to his service, scholarship, and intellectual curiosity. His participation in committees and advisory boards extended beyond cultural property protection. Examples include membership of the following bodies or their governing boards: Council of Legal Education, Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, National University Commission, Committee on the Advancement of the National Archives of Nigeria, and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Even in retirement, Professor Folarin Shyllon demonstrated his abiding love for the world of learning by remaining intellectually active and productive. His Cultural Heritage Law and Management in Africa, a compilation of some of his essays in cultural heritage law, was published by the Center for Black and African Art and Civilization, CBAC, Lagos, in 2013. Shortly before he passed away on 13 January 2021, he completed 2 books, which will be published posthumously. Thank you very much for your attention, listening to the biography of Professor Folarin Shyllon. May I now invite the First Lady Sikh in Nigeria, Chief Olawale Senior Advocate of Nigeria, to make a presentation on Professor Folarin Shyllon. Chief Olawale Senior Advocate does not actually need an introduction, but for the benefit of those who are not lawyers, she is the first female in Nigeria to be conferred with the title of Senior Advocate of Nigeria. She is patron Nigerian Bar Association by the branch, and she coordinates in a way the activities of the body of Senior Advocates of Nigeria, by virtue of being perhaps the oldest senior advocate who is active. May I yield the floor to Mama Chief Olawale Shyllon, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, after which Ms. Ifeko Omogi Okaru will take the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Shyllon. I would like to greet everyone who is participating in this program. And in particular, I would like to extend commiseration to Mrs. Adiola Shyllon, the children and the family. And I would also like to wish you every singular success in all the arrangements for his funeral. I would like to also extend to you some Pauline words of comfort. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 15. But I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others who have no hope. So the Bible tells you this, not to sorrow like those without hope. Another one is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3 to 4. Blessed be God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies, and the God of comfort, who comfort us when we are in tribulation, that we may be able to comfort all those which may be in trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted. The departure of Professor Folarin Shyllon is a huge and tremendous loss for the legal profession and for legal scholarship. He exhibited intellectual prowess early in life. He wrote books on slavery. I don't know whether Onyola will try to republish those books. And he also worked in the Faculty of African Studies before he became the Dean of the University, the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan. He was Dean from 1984 to 1991. He laid such an excellent foundation, solid foundation for that faculty. And that faculty has become one of the most reputable faculties of law in Nigeria. As dean, he was the one who admitted my doctor lawyer daughter, Dr. Yemisi Shyllon, when after reading medicine, he decided to read law. Professor Shyllon was so impressed with her, and of course, gave her instantaneous admission. Recently, both of them met at a meeting of the Nigerian Bar Association in Ibadan, and it was good to see the professor and the student to engage in some intellectual conversation. Professor Shyllon was of prodigious scholarship. It was very knowledgeable. Even when he was dean, he lectured on the Constitution, the Nigerian legal system, jurisprudence, and administrative law. So he nearly covered the field, as we say in law. Now that he has left us, we must continue the good work which he began. And also, I would like to just offer you these words of advice. You know, lawyers never retire. I always say that. To everyone. And when Professor Shyllon did when he was alive. Now, it is true that sometimes we're in great tribulation, but let us know that God is always with us. And I do plead with Mrs. Adeola Shyllon not to submerge herself in grief, because he too would not like that. And in passing, I would like also now to refer to another Folarin statement that we who are here on earth must always remember there will be a time we also must really try to do our best. Professor Shyllon, I would like to offer you these Folarin words again in Timothy chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, with the Lord the righteous judge, shall give to me on that day, and not only to me, but to all those who love his appearance. And I want to offer Mrs. Adeola Shyllon a hymn that should help her to bear this bereavement. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea, whenever my Lord that has brought me here, oh, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me to this day of tributes. I stand on what Chief Shyllon cares, commiserations to the family. As I also recall the day my mom died and the message I got from Pop himself, wishing that she rests in perfect peace. I pray he rests in perfect peace. My tribute is a bit long, but I felt this would be my opportunity to give back stuff and to tell the story of my relationship with Professor Shyllon, his contribution, and his impact in all that we did at the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And let me start with a quotation when people ask me about transformation. And that is the fact that in an organizational transformation process, your ability to surround yourself with persons that combine both character and competence is key. The story of the transformation of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Nigeria, in the period from 2004 to 2012 cannot be complete without paying homage to the great men and women who contributed to this process. Professor Folarin Olawale, who I'll refer to as Professor Shyllon, was one of such men. From 2004 to 2007, activities were in top gear to set the foundation for the massive changes needed to build a service that would generate the necessary revenues for the development of our country, Nigeria. In achieving our goal of administering and collecting revenues needed, especially without depending on oil revenues, one of the strategies to achieve this was to make the Federal Inland Revenue Service, or FRS, a modern public service institution. This required, amongst others, making the Federal Inland Revenue Service autonomous of the civil service to enable the recruitment, compensation, discipline, and improved performance management of staff. Assurance of an independent source of funding for its operations, and enactment of a law to provide legal backing and sustainability of actions taken or to be taken. A lot of work therefore went into developing and enacting the law, establishing the Federal Inland Revenue Service as an autonomous organization, and signed into law by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as an act of the National Assembly, called the Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act 2007. Seamlessly executing this law with the right team at the governing board and management level, became my next priority. For the board, the Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act 2007 provided a 15-member board made up of the executive chairman, 6 individual members representing the 6 geopolitical zones: North Central, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, and South-South, as well as 8 institutional members. Individual appointments were made by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. However, in my case, and as part of the unfettered support received from President Olusegun Obasanjo to drive the transformation process, I was given the honor to recommend suitable persons as board members for appointment by Mr. President. To achieve this, I set out the criteria needed to be considered for selection. I reached out to those I knew and those I didn't, basically to request for people with the credentials that will establish the FRS board as balanced and diverse with different skill sets and experiences. I was clear in my mind that we needed persons that were respected, firm, forthright, and one in whom the appointment will add value to the service. I was also clear that all appointments had to immediately signal that the change in the FRS was real. In my view, and my experience has shown, appointments made signal the kind of change to expect. On one fateful day, as I spoke out my intentions, pondering through possible names, my husband, Mr. Okaru, without quivering, immediately informed me of his professor and dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Ibadan that met all requirements needed. Professor Shyllon was his professor of law and the foundation dean of the Faculty of Law, a position he was appointed to in 1984. At that time, students who had graduated in other fields of study were allowed to apply as graduate students to take law as a second degree. His recollections of the University of Ibadan Law Program selection process, of which he was a beneficiary, and his tutelage under Professor Shyllon, spoke about a man with a clear line of sight for excellence, regardless of whose ox was gone. His narrative of Professor Shyllon's actions spoke loudly about the kind of person he was, even though I had never heard of him before then, or at least I thought so. In Mr. Okaru's words, the selection process into the law program under the leadership of Professor Shyllon was above par and strictly on merit, and that he spoke his mind and left no stones unturned. Now, even with all that, I challenged Mr. Okaru to be sure that this wasn't an issue of a professor he just liked, and that he truly met the requirements. And he gave even more examples. This triggered the phone call to Professor Shyllon, the receipt of his CV, which was even more intimidating than how he had been described, the forwarding of his name as part of the list of recommended board members, and his selection by President Olusegun Obasanjo as the Southwest Zone representative on the FRS board. I'm exceedingly proud of the FRS board that supported me through the transformation of the FRS, and Professor Shyllon, as one of these board members, was a model of character and competence who was supportive throughout and painstaking in his approach. Professor Shyllon not only represented the Southwest Zone, but he was also chairman of the Staff and General Purposes Committee, one of the FRS board committees set up in line with the FRS board governance charter we had all worked hard to develop and improve. This committee was responsible for advising the board on all matters that had to do with the transition of staff from the old service to the new, promotions, recruitment, management of the unions, reviewing the draft human resource policies prepared by management, including a new scheme of service, new terms of conditions of service, new salary structure, and the list goes on. We worked hard. ability to manage our human resources through a mega transition in an open and transparent manner was one of the hallmarks of the transformation process. God bless me, God bless Nigeria, with a committee chaired by Professor Shyllon, working with a strong management and modernization team that made that process one we can proudly speak of and speak about nearly 10 years after. His ideas, insights, and contributions were apt. My second tenure as executive chairman ended in April 2012, causing me to leave the board for other individual board members whose tenure and his ended in July 2012. The inaugural FRS board, of which Professor Shyllon was a part, continued its work to the very last day. I was disappointed that the FRS board, excluding myself, of course I had spent 2 years, that only served one term, was not immediately reappointed, given all they had contributed and done, but I've however learned to be thankful for the opportunity given to serve at all. The second FRS board under the FRS Act was appointed over 7 years after, in December 2019. Professor Shyllon brought this fact home in September last year as part of the new FRS board induction program with my firm Anchor. I had invited him to give a presentation on his experiences at the FRS and proffer advice to the board. He was unable to travel to Abuja in view of the need to be wary of the COVID-19 pandemic, but he presented a great paper in his usual style from his home base in Ibadan. At this session, he reiterated the importance of good governance as a hallmark of a model public service institution. Little did I know that would be my last full interaction with him. Incidentally, long before meeting Professor Shyllon, and I got to know that later, his first son, Oyin, worked with me as part of the strategy team of Ristrol Limited, the firm I founded in 1996 and had responsibility for prior to my joining and taking appointment at the FRS. So in starting off with Oyin, not knowing I was going to end up knowing the entire family, Oyin is one of the brightest and most hardworking persons I have ever worked with. I got to know Oyin's relationship as his son after meeting Professor Shyllon in person. Years later, after I left the FRS, I also found out that his dear wife, Ma Adeola Shyllon, is a proud and much older alumna of Queen's College Lagos and member of the Queen's College Old Girls Association, where I'm currently president. Prof and Mrs. Shyllon have brought up very respectful, intelligent, and high-achieving children. My personal linkages to his family were never in consideration or even brought to the fore in my interactions with Professor Shyllon. Professor Shyllon will be best remembered as a highly cerebral academic, a builder of people, and a great family man. Apart from his biological children, his students and acquaintances along his life's journey were integral parts of his family. He was to the very end adding value to life and to humanity. He will be greatly missed. My last conversation with Professor Shyllon was to discuss a shared interest in history. When I got to know he was writing 2 books that combine history and law, one on the Yoruba legal system and the other on Edward Long's Libel of Africa, a book that will give us insights to racism and slavery during the colonial times. I hadn't realized that Professor Shyllon was first a professor of African Studies before transferring to be a professor of law. We agreed to discuss in depth once his books were published, a situation that can now never hold. However, I am consoled that in his books, he left a lasting legacy of his thoughts and ideas, so he continues to impact us even after passing. Nigeria and the public service environment is a much better place because of men like Professor Shyllon. I am a better person because I met and worked with him, and I'm thankful for his life and his legacies. I thank his family for sharing him with so many of us. He was exceedingly proud of his wife and children, and they must miss him even more so. Yet the death of loved ones constantly reminds us that someday our time will also come to exit this world. Professor Folarin Olawale Shyllon, in his lifetime and after, is an icon to be celebrated always. Surreal, rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ifeoko Omogwe Okaru. You spoke on behalf of not only yourself, not only your husband, but also those of us who are students of Professor Shyllon. It's now my pleasure to invite the representative of actually, he flew to Ibadan in 1975 because the airport was so from me.
Sorry, John, we couldn't hear what you were saying.
Sorry, please. Sorry.
I don't know whether
the Institute of African Studies. While waiting for the Institute of African Studies to get ready or join us here, I want to request Mr. Mayo Adediran and then Professor Victor Duga if they are online.
Yeah, good afternoon. Aku Arafe Araku. Ojo Ajina Sirawan. My name is Mayo Adediran, President of the International Council of African Museums. I'm still in a state of shock. I don't believe that Professor Folarin Shyllon is no more. We spoke on the 10th of January 2021. He called in his usual manner to greet, and in the Yoruba practice, asked for every member of my family and my work and my being and my state of life. And after that, he went further into the issues of the day which he had called me for. And then we went further to discuss some ongoing projects and some issues going on in UNESCO, at the African Union, and around Nigeria and around Africa. And 3 days after, I got a call from Mama Shyllon, as I used to call her, and said, "Already law." And I was in a shock. And after a few minutes, she said, "Are you there?" And I answered, "Mama, I'll call you back." Because it was unbelievable. And up till now, I still could not gather and package myself back as to why within 3 days he suddenly has gone. I first heard about Professor Shyllon in Paris from a friend at UNESCO when I went for the International Council of Museums meeting, and we were talking about illicit trafficking in cultural property. We're talking about restitution of Nigerian cultural property and also restitution. And he said, you need to speak with one Nigerian who is very, very good in cultural law. And I took the address from him, and then I was the curator of the National Museum in Calabar. That was way back in 1999, 1996 or so, 1996. And then when I arrived back to Nigeria, I took a journey to Ibadan and then discussed with him. And then we shared passions about the issues of illicit trafficking in cultural property, restitution and return of cultural property. In the year 2001, 2001, I was still the president of the Museum Association of Nigeria, and we were to hold our annual meeting in Calabar, where all leaders of museum professionals would be present. So I invited him as the president then to give us a lecture on strategies against illicit trafficking in cultural property, domestication of UNESCO's conventions and UNIDRA and all of that into our local laws. And he did not disappoint in doing that. He spoke extensively on that to the admiration of all at the National Commission for Museums and Monuments and all who had to do with the issues about museums and members drawn from far and wide of the Museum Association of Nigeria. This led to a number of issues that on my return to Paris with some of our own strategy, I wanted to know much more about Professor Shyllon. And I was told of several things he has done through UNESCO. And more importantly, he was hired by the South Korean government to help fight for the return of manuscripts that the French government took from Korea, from Seoul, during the occupation of the Second World War. And he won. And he won completely, even though the article of the victory was later not filled by the French government. But that was a big plus for a Nigerian, and I don't know how many people realize that the Nigerian has gotten this kind of feat in international law. From this, he introduced me into art, antiquity, and law. And for every article that he contributed into the publications, he gave me a copy of his writing before and after the publication. And this endeared my heart to him, that when I left the position of the Curator National Museum Calabar and became the Director of Museums in Abuja, one of the first things to do was to enlist him in the fight against illicit cultural property. And for the 6.5 years or 7 that I was Director of Museums, most of our international museums, they did not go without his contribution to it, because we cannot in any way miss out for this. Also, in return for what he has been and for what he has been fighting for and for all that he has published about, I discussed in 2006 when we were preparing for the exhibition of Benin, Kings and Rituals, caught out from Nigeria, was discussing about the future role of Nigeria's participation in such an exhibition, which was to be the first time that several Benin pieces, which were taken away in February 1897, it will be the first time that all of them will be coming from their places of dispersal into one common room in Vienna. And over 600 pieces of these materials were brought to the Museum of Mankind, so to say, at Vienna for an exhibition. And during the preparation for that exhibition, I spoke with one of the curators of the exhibitions to please let us have a dialogue on the future of these materials. I realized that these materials were of great importance to the Benin people, to Nigeria, and to the world. But its future needs to be settled, and its future needs to be discussed. And with grace of God, this turned out to what has become the Benin Dialogue Group. And on arrival, I enlisted his services to join us at the inauguration of the first meeting of the Benin Dialogue Group. We started well until I retired in 2011, and after I retired, I still made every effort that he was kept on the dialogue group. In 2013-2014, there was a meeting in Benin in which the meeting, which was meant to be a discussion and a dialogue amidst civil servants who had no power, authorities to release or to give out material culture of our various countries. But for us to be able to read the minds of our various governments and probably to wet the ground of the European governments, we spoke to their civil servants. But unfortunately, at the Benin meeting, it was turned to be a political issue, and many of them at that meeting backed out. But it took the wisdom, the elderly nature of Professor Shyllon, who was the oldest amidst all the participants, who also had a good knowledge of law and a professor of law, and who knew all the historical background, because some of the, especially the Nigerian section of it, were joiners. They were not at the reception, at the concept stage of that. And he was able to bring the group back, and he served on that group till his death. He has performed wonderfully and incredibly well in the group, and UNESCO has also recognized that. And today, that has set a model for several other countries now that they want to emulate what it was of the Benin Dialogue Group on the return of cultural property to many African countries. Back home to Nigeria now, and to the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. For the period I was the director of museums, I brought him to assist in the redrafting of the Nigerian National Commission for Museums and Monuments law, and to assist us in the area of domesticating Convention of UNESCO and the UNIDRA. I also would like to say that Professor Shyllon has also taken me as a child and as a brother, that while away in Germany on a sabbatical or so, or on a 3-month study tour, he was invited by the African Union, together with Professor Victor Duga, who unavoidably could not join us on this meeting, to do a work on African cultural goods and European cultural goods. And with 3 other professors from Tanzania, from Kenya and Uganda, and another from Nigeria, Professor Dandara, and myself, we worked assiduously for about 3 months to produce a document for the European Union and the African Union, which we presented in Accra, Ghana, a year later to them as a working document. While I was still in Calabar in 2004, 2005, I traveled out to England in preparation for the establishment of the Museum of Slave History in Calabar. And I was shocked again that while at the Liverpool, at Bristol, and also in London, I came across some of his writings about slavery and about black people who had lived in Europe, in London, in UK long ago, and some of their activities into slavery. And as I went back to meet again, that you never told me you were multifaceted and dimensional in your, and then he opened up and gave me several of his collection of books and gave me links to all. And today I can say for all of his publications, he has joyfully and gladly made them available for me. There's so much to say about his life, about his person, about the scholarship and the nature of him. When we sit together, when we travel together, he has a lot of jokes. He has a lot of life, memorable things that makes life tick and makes it worth. It's never a dull moment sitting with him in the morning, in the evening, and sometimes in the late into the night. Out of this country, we sit and talk, and you hear stories over stories, and this gladdens my heart. Much more importantly, of what I have known about him is that he is a believer, a true believer. He could be annoyed, but the night will never pass over his anger. He could caution. He wakes up in the morning embracing. I looked through the scriptures to find what could be the right thing to write for his epitaph, and I found this to be in Psalm 116, verse 15. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his faithful servants. To Mama Shyllon, as I always say, to the children, to friends, colleagues gathered here, relations, and all from around the world, I say, may God grant us all the comfort to bear this irreparable loss. Thank you.
Your tribute to Professor Shyllon has given us another perspective about him. Some say Professor Shyllon was quiet, but I tell them that when you are close to him, you know that Professor Shyllon is an engaging communicator. We are very glad to have received your tribute and your words of commiseration. Thank you very much. So we will take a short interlude of music so that I can stretch our legs. And then from the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan, and then the Faculty of Law, Olawale Onabanjo University. Thank you.
Prof, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
I just came in from the court. I had all day and tried to quickly see if I can still meet up. So I've just met the last speaker and your remarks there. You are in the half time now.
Thank you. So, for that That's Dr. Alex Izion, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, with the delight to have
Hello.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll be reading the tribute of Professor Bangboshe. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
But there is a short interlude.
Okay.
There is a short interlude. If you could wait.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And we will be called upon when it is the turn of the Faculty of Law.
Oh, okay.
Music on.
Professor Akitayo, please, would you let us know when it is our turn? I thought you said there was a short interlude. For how long? Professor Akitayo.
Yes, ma'am. We expected musical interlude, but I think we'll resume our program and take the musical interlude later.
Okay, so
Thank you.
when you are ready, let us know.
So, I'm a senior advocate, and the senior advocate of Nigeria. Second session of Law, University of Ibadan. So may I invite the representatives of the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan, to present their tribute one after the other. Thank you very much.
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan.
Yes, I said good evening, everyone. My name is Nisola Akintola. I am the dean of the. I'll start with my tribute, followed with Professor Bangboshe's tribute, and the heads of department will follow one after the other. So to Mama Mrs. Shyllon, to Oni, Olawale, Yemi, and Lamide, friends and family, Akinyikpe Eku Arafera Aku, Ojo Ajina Fira o. We know that sorrow fills our heart at this moment. A sense of a loss, a sorrow that may be deep, and for each person, the feeling is different. However, Professor Shyllon, who has silently closed the door of life and departed from us, has left a vacuum. He will surely be missed, particularly in areas where he has brightened our lives, where he has brought hope. Prof had an unparalleled energy and enthusiasm. His dedication to the protection of cultural heritage will remain as an example to us all. his legacy shall be remembered for decades to come. As Albert Einstein said, the value of a man should be seen in what he gives and not in what he is able to receive. In one word, Prof was a man who exemplified this. He gave. He gave his work, he gave his life, he gave his time, and he gave his intellect. In 1974 and 77, if I'm not mistaken, Professor Shyllon established his intellectual credentials with two books, Black Slaves in Britain and Black People in Britain. Both were published by the Oxford University Press. Also, as a founding dean of the Faculty of Law, he established his footprints in the sands of academia and the legal profession. He approached the task of building a young faculty with his quiet skill and tenacity. He worked tirelessly even for the advancement of the National Archive. Professor Shyllon's lifelong commitment to the protection of cultural property was also marked by his humility, his generosity, and his amiable self. His writing, according to Ernesto Otone of the UNIA draft, says he continues to inspire, according to him, continues to inspire the present and future generations. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here to say goodbye to him. I would also like to say that we are gathered to celebrate a life worthy of emulation. His life exemplified brilliance. His life was a life that inspired emulation. His life was one that burned so that other sparks could be lit up. I have known Professor Shyllon since around 1988. He was a close associate of my late father. He attended my wedding, and I can say he was instrumental to my being employed into the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan. When I joined the faculty as a very young lecturer, I knew him to be a strategic thinker, a visionary, who was brilliant and both innovative and creative. He contributed immensely to the development of the faculty. Prof was deeply concerned with improving anyone who was willing and everything that could be innovative. I will close with this saying that in my humble but candid opinion, I will say that indeed the academia, the legal profession in Nigeria, and even the world at large has lost one of the founding fathers of cultural law. He was an outstanding expert. He was a keen protector of our cultural heritage. His work and tireless effort to protect our culture and our heritage will remain a reference point for generations to come. Adieu, Prof. Adieu, good leader. We will meet to part no more at the feet of Jesus. Thank you. Dr. Olawale, this presents Professor Bangoshe's tribute.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Professor Folarin Shyllon, on behalf of Professor Bangoshe, who is
Sorry, you may have two devices. If you have two devices, it will be interfering. Dr. Olawale,
I'm using only one device.
which other device?
I'm already using only one device. The other one is off. Can you hear me? Can I go on?
Yes, please, I can hear you. I can hear you. Can hear you clear.
So I'm reading a tribute on behalf of Professor Bagboshe SAN, who is currently out of town. No, she wanted to be here, but she's currently attending another meeting. So I read on his behalf. But before I go on, I would say that Professor Folarin Shyllon was more than a teacher to me personally. He was a father to me. And he took us by the hand. He knew us by personal names as his teacher. May his gentle soul rest in peace. I read. A tribute to Professor Folarin Shyllon. I would not be a professor of law if Professor Shyllon had not encouraged me to join the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan in 1987. He was the dean of the faculty at the time. He told me that I would not regret it. And he told me to ignore a lucrative option I had at that time. And true to his words, I have not regretted taking up the job as a lecturer. Professor Shyllon was like a big uncle, though we were not related. He ensured I was on track in my academic journey. When I applied for the rank of STILK in 2018, he gladly wrote a glowing reference letter for me, and he came personally to the Faculty of Law on a Sunday to give me the reference letter. I remember that he told me to drive out first from the faculty so that he will ensure that I am safe. My key got stuck in the ignition of the car, and the car refused to start. He laughed and told me, "Yeah, Missy, you see why God allowed me to wait? Wise prof. The car started and I did not tell him to leave first. I drove in front and he drove right behind me until we parted ways. The car never tried it again till date." When I was eventually elevated to the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, guess who arrived first at the Thanksgiving service? Your guess is right. Professor Folarin Shyllon and Auntie Mrs. Shyllon. He was a good man with a good heart. May God console Mrs. Shyllon, the children, and the entire legal academic community. Adieu, Professor Folarin Shyllon, till we meet to part no more. Thank you very much. Mrs. Tafita, please.
Next, Faculty of Law, you are.
Thank you very much, Ma, and everyone. Good evening. My name is Dr. Olawale. I'm here to pay our tribute on behalf of the Department of Private and Property Law. For me, personally, let me start by talking about our own pioneer dean, Professor Olawale Folarin Shyllon. Professor Shyllon, to us, is more of a father. Everyone has said so many things here this evening, but I want to say something that is very peculiar to my own state, the 8990 state. I came in through the Joint Admissions Matriculation Board. We were the first set of JAMBI of the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan, in 8990. And coming in as JAMBI, we were quite young, and we were quite young to the other students that were in the faculty at that time. But with a father like Professor Folarin Shyllon, we were able to be, taken into the fold by our seniors. That is one thing that we got from Professor Folarin Shyllon at that time. And we remember very well, I remember very well, that he was taking us on introduction to law, and he actually shared our interest in the course. Professor Folarin Shyllon is a mentor, is a diligent teacher with a lot of candor and is a visionary. There are so many things that everyone has said about Professor Folarin Shyllon this evening, and which is quite true. And I don't want to go on to start doing a repetition of words. What I would only say, and I would want to communicate to the family, is that Professor Folarin Shyllon's life is a life of celebration. There shouldn't be any mourning, though it is painful to lose a dear one or a loved one. But in this, we take solace that, according to the Yoruba saying that Didun ni ìrántí olódodo. So we should always remember him, and we should always remember him for the good things, the exemplary life that he has lived, and what he has imparted into many. I want to leave this by saying, good night, Professor Folarin Shyllon. Adieu to a great teacher, a wonderful father, a humble and a visionary. We would see you on the resurrection morning, when we would be able to say that good morning that you are popularly known for. Thank you for imparting our lives. Thank you. We thank God for the gift that you have been to your generation. Good night, bro.
Thank you, Dr. Kafuta. Can we have Dr. Olaniyan? Is he on the line? Dr. Fagbemi?
Yes. And then just any other miscellaneous free matter of
Dr. Aina? I suppose that is all from the Faculty of Law. Over to you, Professor Akintayo.
Thank you very much, my dean. We have some savings.
Professor Akintayo, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Okay, is it our turn now? Hello?
Dr. Akrimade, just a few minutes, please.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Professor Duga.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I am Professor Duga, Professor of Theatre and Media Arts at Federal University of Lafayette. In 2010, as a professor at the University of Jos, I had a call for a research consultancy put out by the African Union. And to respond to that, I needed to put up a team of experts who will research the illicit trafficking of African cultural goods. And this was a project to be done by the African Union and the European Union. I was interested in this project and thinking about how to set up a viable team. I went online to research, and one name kept popping up with every search, and that was Professor Folarin, Shyllon. And at the end of my search, I was convinced I needed to get in touch with him. So I searched for his phone number online, and when I finally got it, I put a call through to him. And in a space of 15 minutes, we spoke as though we knew each other for a very long time. He accepted to be part of the proposal, and the proposal went very far. At the end of the search, my team from Nigeria, made up of professors from other places, as Nan Mayo had just told us a short while ago, and another team from Mozambique. But one thing about my team was that we had Professor Shyllon on it, and that was the edge we had over the other team, because he represented a cultural institution, a reservoir of knowledge as far as law and cultural property is concerned. We embarked on this research project, and I was a co-team leader with him. I was surprised at the gamut of knowledge that were at his fingertips. Not only did he know all the UNESCO conventions regarding cultural properties, he knew all the modifications. He was a library that made the work really very easy. One funny thing is that every time we had to do a draft, he would read the corrections to me, and I have to do the corrections on the text itself. I remember I had to travel out to meet him in Munich. I was in Germany at the time, and he was in Germany also. And we met at the Munich train station, and we hugged each other like we've known ourselves since I was born. I was fond of him for one thing. Going through his CV, I realized that he got his master's degree in 1967 from the University of London. And that was the year I was born. And I never failed to remind him that by the time I was being born, he already had his master's at hand. We fondly called him Daddy. He was full of knowledge, always eager to share this knowledge. As a result of the work that we did, the African Union asked us to go ahead and create another team to draft a model law for the protection of African cultural property. We did this with a lot of the input that he made through the research process. Yesterday, I was online with the cultural officer at the African Union, Madam Angela Martins. She sends her condolences to the family. She's going to send a formal tribute. She's currently on vacation somewhere else. I want to, on behalf of the research team that worked on that particular project, to extend our fond condolences to the family. I never met any of the family members, but honestly, he spoke so much about Mama. He spoke so much about Lolade. He told us about going to South Africa to see his grandchildren. He was a fond family man. We've lost him on this path, but he has done so much that we will continue to remember him for. Once again, to the family, may the Lord comfort you all and grant us all the grace and the fortitude to bear his immense loss. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Duga. We've seen another part of Professor Shyllon. through your presentation. The reality is that it's what knew no ban. So, where you are coming from, there was a time, I don't know how that researcher got to know his name. Yeah, have to look for a copy of. You will have to translate assessment report. Not take our contribution to our we see on a Banjo University, the platform. At the right time, I will invite you the tribute on behalf of the Institute of Africa. Which place where Professor Shyllon worked in the university. University now we can have a presentation from the Faculty of Law Olawale Onabanjo University Agbewoye.
Thank you, Professor Olawale Akitayo. I presume you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Olawale Onabanjo University, and the entire staff of the Faculty of Law, I join others in commiserating with the Shyllon family on the exit of Professor Folarin Shyllon. No doubt, he has created a gap which will be very difficult to fill in the area of his specialization, which is law and cultural properties, an area in which he was very versatile. My first contact with Professor Shyllon was sometimes around 2006. This was when he came on sabbatical at Olawale Onabanjo University at Agbewoye. He was a man of extraordinary determination, transparent, and does everything with passion, though he was very strict. One thing I observed about him was that he was a highly principled man, an embodiment of the virtues of honesty, charity, probity, fairness, combined with justice. These are virtues I know of him as a colleague at work. At the professional level, Professor Shyllon was an effective and efficient teacher, a seasoned educationist, and a disciplinarian. He was always loving and supportive. I recall vividly that when he joined the services of the university, he shared office with a colleague, Professor Shokefun, at the then mini campus of the university when he commenced his sabbatical. This attests to the fact that he was a very humble man. He was a stickler for time, who exhibited a trace of a British man. Professor Folarin Shyllon will be greatly missed. Eternal rest, I pray you grant him, O God. Thank you. I have other colleagues presently who will also wish to say something about Professor Shyllon. May I call on Mr. Shyllon? Mr. Lee, are you there?
Thank you, sir. The Dean of Law, Olawale Onabanjo University, Dr. Gbade Akinrimade. I also wish to join other friends, well wishers, and family members of Professor Folarin Olawale Shyllon to also offer my tribute to him. First, my condolences to the widow of the late Reverend Professor, Mrs. Adeola Shyllon. I know how you will be feeling now, and I pray that God Almighty will be your comfort. I met Professor Shyllon, just as the Dean said, around 2006 when he came around to our faculty on sabbatical. My HOD called me to tell me I was the one taking the law of intellectual property then. So he called me, he said, Lee, we'll be giving you a huge relief and a rewarding one too, because Professor Shyllon will be joining us. When he mentioned the name, I didn't know the kind of feelings that I had then. It was a kind of mixed feelings that, if this erudite professor comes and it's his area that we all know as his forte, that I'm also sort of holding the brief for him. How am I going to fare? But when Baba came around, that's how we used to call him. He made everything easy. And it was for me a very rewarding experience. Professor Shyllon took interest in my career progression because he then asked me,
Mama,
what are my plans for the PhD at
Mama.
And he facilitated my journey to Max Planck in Munich, Germany, and also offered to supervise my PhD when I was contemplating then in having it in UI. Professor Shyllon was a professional extraordinaire and a mentor par excellence. We will all miss him, and sorely too. And if those of us who knew Professor Shyllon for a very short period, are missing him this much, how much more those who had known him all his life? I commiserate with the family of the deceased, and I want to bid the erudite professor of law farewell and good night. Thank you.
Okay, may I ask Mrs. Olawale on behalf? Mrs. Olawale, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm very much around, sir. Thank you very much, my dean. Distinguished audience, good evening. And I want to say that this is a very great occasion for me to talk about our daddy. Yes, I'm unmuted now. Thank you. I was privileged, or I'm still privileged to have met Professor Folarin Shyllon when I joined the services of Olabisi Obasanjo University in 2006. And since then, it has been one kind of relationship. And that has been the fact that a very known fact to everyone gathered here today is the fact that Professor Shyllon was born on the 23rd of July. I was born on the 22nd of July. A chance conversation between myself and Daddy at the time that I was a dean revealed this to him. And so he said, oh, so I did that. So you mean you are a whole day older than me? I laughed. And since then, he started calling me his elder sister. We say, oh, where is my elder sister? And that is Adijat. Even though I must have been born about 40 or 50 years after he was born. And so it became a ritual for me to call him on his birthday and then to wish him a happy birthday. And then we say, oh, so sorry, I forgot yesterday. Then on other occasions, we'll be the one to call and say, Adija, oh, I remember today is your birthday. I know you will call me tomorrow. July 23rd, 2020, despite COVID, I called him. And he was so happy because there had been a break of about maybe 2 or 3 years. I think the last time I called him for July 2020 was in 2018 or thereabouts. And so, you will see my experience with Professor Shyllon more or less as that of a father to a daughter, even though I never met any of his family one-on-one. I remember attending the wedding. Was it Lolade's wedding at Ibadan? I remember attending, but I never got close to the family. But to Mommy Shyllon, I want to say that Shyllon is resting. He's resting from the sorrows and the tears of this place. He's in a place where there is warmth and comfort, and where there are no days and years. I want you to think of him as living, because he's still living in the hearts of those he touched. I'm an example of such lives that he touched. Nothing loved is ever lost. And I want to say to all the children too, that he was so much loved. He was so much loved, and he loved so much. Even though we grieve today, yes, because when Professor Imasoge, Musumala Imasoge, called me to say that he was no more, that he has departed this earthly abode of ours, I couldn't, for some minutes, I couldn't get myself, as we say in our local parlance now. But let me just say that his journey has just begun. Professor Shyllon's angelic wings will fly on, and surely his peaceful abode shall be at the bottom or the bosom of his Lord. I pray for everyone gathered here today, celebrating him, that we shall all be celebrated, not just at our death, but here on earth. I pray also for the family, that eternal comfort shall be yours. I pray for the academia, especially my faculty, the Faculty of Law, Ibadan. I pray for everyone that Omorere Agbenyawa. No, that is in Yoruba. What I've just said to translate is that our own children, good children, will survive us. Thank you, everyone, and my hearty commendations to the Faculty of Law, Ibadan, for organizing this tribute. Thank you once again. May the soul of Professor Folarin Olawale Shyllon continue to rest in peace forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Okay, now to Professor Adeojo. Well, depending on the arrangement, my colleague Shogunle is also listed from Olabisi Onabanjo University.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I think I want to believe you can all hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much.
And we want to see your face.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I think you can see my face now. I wouldn't know. Sorry, I can't really run this phone very well. Sorry about that. Indeed, what a day of paying tribute to somebody who is an outstanding character, an enigma in all conceivable dimensions that one can think of. I heard of the demise of Professor Shyllon while I was outside of this country, just few days after having discussion with him on phone. His death to me was so devastating that I couldn't really respond to the call of the news. I spoke with him just a few days before, and he told me, Larry, in February, I'm going to have a book presentation. He did not ask me as to whether I would be around or not. But the way we discussed, he knew really that I would be around. So I just told him, sir, that's great. If I was the man who is said to be retired but never tired, that is Professor Folarin Shyllon for you. I want to join my colleague, Dr. Lee, when he talked about him as someone who has one's academic progression in mind. He is more of a father figure to me. Calls me by my name, Larry. I cannot begin to recollect several ways in which he has impacted my life. At the departmental level, he came to our faculty, and incidentally, by virtue of his field of study, he was a member of our department. We really enjoyed his presence at every departmental meeting against the background of his wealth of experience in that field. We had him for a very brief period, so short a period, but very impactful. Like I said, he had retired from the University of Ibadan. He was just there with us, more or less like an adjunct lecturer. But the very brief period he had with us was so impactful that it will forever be a memory in the hearts of everyone in the department. Professor Shyllon's academic career, really, a lot of us have alluded to it. In that area, he was one who was ready to ensure that you get to your next level. I can remember vividly a time when he called me. He said, Larry, proposal at Moniko Concord. He was a person who will stand on you to ensure that what he asks you to do, you must not fail in it. It's not, if it was someone who was very lackadaisical, well, I told him, but he was not forthcoming. He will wait on you until you get there. That is the kind of person Professor Shyllon was. He told me, Larry, where is that proposal I asked you to write? I said, sir, in a week's time, 2 weeks' time, where is that proposal? Until I got it out. Professor Shyllon was with us for so brief a period. But I want to say it loud and clear that he was someone who impacted most members of my department to the extent of getting us scholarship awards in renowned institutions outside of Nigeria. Max Planck Institute for Comparative and International Private Law, Hamburg. I was there on his recommendation in 2009. Just like the one my colleague, Dr. Lee, also talked about in Munich. Also, at UNIDROA, his name opens the door. Institute for Unification of Private Law is to testify of the outstanding scholarship that Professor Shyllon represents. He will be sorely missed indeed. He was a mentor of outstanding character, always ready to assist, and he did. In our department, like I said, we will forever remember Professor Shyllon. On the personal note, is one that I can never forget in life. And if there is any professor in my life that is known in my family as a mentor that I have the greatest respect for, is no other than Professor Folarin Shyllon. It was so devastating that when I came back and I got to the family house, when Mommy Shyllon cited me, Ó ní mọ́mì ṣe rántí mi. Ó ní mọ́mì ní Adé Òjó. Is to tell you the level of my relationship with mommy and with.
Sir, you're on mute.
What? Oh God. Sorry, God.
We hear you now.
Hello? Hello, can you?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
How emotional this period is to you?
Yes. When I got back and I had to, that was the very first place I had to get to. On getting back to Nigeria, just some days ago, mommy told me, Adé Òjó, only that is law. Money, mommy, although I drew that was all I could mutter out. It was so devastating. Really, there is more to say concerning this great man who has been there for many of us in the field of academics. But all we can only rest content with the fact that this is just the way of man, according to the scriptures. We are here for a while, and the time comes when we shall take our own exit. My dear daddy, Professor Shyllon, had taken his own exit out of this world, and we will continue to remember him for his good works. I commiserate with mommy Shyllon, with the children, with the family. I pray that the memory of Professor Shyllon will continue to be a blessing. I thank everyone for listening. God bless you all. Thank you.
Yes. Last one on the list, Mr. Shogole. Mr. Abayomi Shogole. Prof, if you leave his line, then that will be all for Mr. Labisi and Obanjo University.
Thank you very much, Otunbade Akínbádé, Olabisi Obanjo University, Faculty of Law. So we have one saying, please permit me to apologize delay in inviting is the presentation. Daddy Shoderu, you have to unmute yourself, sir. Everybody has been muted.
Hello.
We can hear you, sir.
You want me to talk? That
Yes.
Shoderu.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm an old mate of Professor Shyllon. And we belong to the same group in the group website of 60. I'll just
just go straight to my. I hope everybody is hearing me.
We hear, sir.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
You can hear it, sir.
Thank you very much. When we started the journey together at the West Side School, Lagos, over 3 years and 5 years ago, precisely in January 1956, we were about 60 boys brought together by Providence in class 1, consisting of 2 arms, A and B, approximately 30 boys each. By the time we got to Form 5 in 1960, each arm had scaled down to 15 boys for obvious reasons, and we dispersed in December that year after our attending West Africa's certificate examinations to go into the world, so to say, first into immediate appointment and later and further qualifications. It was not until many years after the death of those who went abroad in pursuit of the radial golden fleece that we reassembled ourselves once again as old mates. In the 1980s and 80s, we had established as the starting point of our Old Boys Association, ECOBA, named and called the Korean 60, of which Professor Folarin Shyllon was no mean member. While in school, Folarin was one of the brilliant students, especially in arts and humanities subjects. He was indeed, I can recall, one of the winners of Shell Oil Company prizes for national essay competition for secondary school of those days. Little wonder, he rose to become a highly renowned scholar of international repute in his basic career, law. Hitherto, as members of the Korean 60 Club, we have come a long way, sharing fellowship at meetings and other activities of club. Together, we have striven to give a little back to the school that gave us so much. The foundation which has been the bedrock of our modest individual life achievements. In all this, Professor Shyllon played his part distinctly and honorably, having been the second president of the club and presided over its affairs for about a decade, 1992 to 2001. A few years ago, because of the inevitable decrease in the number of members due to the sting of death and the effect of old age of the surviving members, the frequency of our meetings was reduced from monthly to quarterly, and quite recently was further reduced to twice a year, with venues of the meetings alternating between Ibadan and Lagos, the major cities with residents of members. And on the last December 30, I spoke with him on the phone about our imminent January 9, 2021 meeting in the face of the raging COVID-19 pandemic and the safety security risks in traveling on our roads. And we agreed to keep the meeting, assuring ourselves that missing that one meeting would matter, as we would be supporting to share more future benefits after this.
Are they going to continue?
When we reach the decision,
Okay, I'll transfer 10,000.
little did we know that discussion would be our last, and indeed, that is call to glory was to be only just a few days after the skipped meeting. How indeed man proposes and God disposes. Nevertheless, we give glory to God for the opportunity of celebrating your 80th birthday, though virtually due to COVID-19 pandemic, on the land of the living in splendid health and spirit on the 25th of July last year. At that virtual celebration, packaged by your beloved wife and children from different parts of the globe, all participants wished and prayed that we would celebrate more of such loving moments with you. But alas, that was not to be, and such is life. As death is the inevitable end of life, there is nothing else we can do than to give glory to the Almighty God for your blessed and exemplary life throughout your sojourn on earth, and pray that He grants your soul eternal rest, and your amiable and caring wife, Mrs. Adiola, Folarin, Shyllon, and the children, and indeed the entire family, comfort and fortitude to bear the irreparable loss. Fare thee well, our gentle and easygoing Professor Folarin Shyllon. Apology, adieu, adieu, adieu. May God bless your soul. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that, for allowing me to make that presentation. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Ifeanyi Shudiru. We pray
Yes,
for other members of in Jesus' name.
Korean 60 years.
So we will
Thank you
go
very
back
much.
to yes, sir. We'll go back to academic colleagues, and I want to ask members of the National Association of Teachers of Intellectual Property to come on board. According to the arrangement. I will invite his presentation. Yeah. West. Professor Waki and members of preparing to join us, Ayola, of the Institute of African Studies. So unmute and make the presentation on behalf of the institute. Thank you very much, sir.
Professor Yomi, we're waiting for you.
Well, another, but it's going to be closer.
Professor
and
Dr. Wumi is supposed to speak to talk about the organization, and then one or two of us will speak.
Is she online? Oh.
If not.
Yes,
okay. I'm sorry. Professor Olawale is a member of the family. So let me ask Professor Dr. Yumi to introduce NAPTRI.
I'll be patient.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Professor Olawale.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Akintayo. A good evening to everybody in the house. Please permit me to stand on the existing protocol. I'm here along with some of my other colleagues, Professor Bankole Shojifo and Professor Bambo Adewoko, STN, and other members. We are here on behalf of the Nigerian Association for the Advancement of Teaching and Research in Intellectual Property. This association came together for the first time just sometime in 2019, and we were supposed to, put the group on a stronger footing during the course of last year, 2020, specifically at the annual convention of the Nigerian Association of Law Teachers. But then COVID happened, we were unable to meet, and so we decided to set up a platform to interact among ourselves. And we did that late last year. I think that was around November. Now, personally, I had met Professor Shyllon for the first time sometime in 2017. Of course, before then, I had heard a lot about him. I had read about his work and all that, but I had not had the privilege of meeting him personally until that meeting in Abuja. It sort of trained the trainers program in the area of intellectual property. And I considered it a very huge privilege to meet this intellectual giant that I had heard so much about, However, meeting him elicited mixed feelings in me, because it was like, he was very warm, very friendly, and fatherly. And somehow I was just trying to reconcile the two images in my mind that, such an intellectual giant, and yet very personable and outgoing. And when we then started the platform and we had our first meeting, there were some technical glitches. And so we started out with on the Google platform, the Google Meet, and then had to quickly change over to Zoom. And naturally, I was worried, about the very senior members, of the group, that how would they take this situation. But Prof, in his typical fatherly way, he just took it in very good spirit and with a touch of humor. And after the meeting, he called me and said, this is a good initiative, he's proud of us, and that he'll do his best to participate in the activities. He really encouraged me, gave me some suggestions. But he did say that he was involved in some academic work. He was trying to update some of his works, and so he had some time constraints and would not have so much time, but that he would get back to us when he finished. So from time to time, I would call him, he would respond, until suddenly one day I sent a message and I saw that the message did not deliver, and it was then that I got to know that Prof has passed on. He will be sorely missed by all members of the association, even in the short time that he spent with us. He made his presence felt. The fact that at his age he was still writing, still actively engaged in research, really served as an inspiration to many of us. As I said earlier, I'm just here to introduce the group. We have here one of our senior, two of our senior colleagues, and a number of others, but the two of them will speak on behalf of the association. And the first is our brother Prof, our big brother, who was the first to get a PhD in intellectual property law, and also to teach at the Nigerian Law School, teach IT at the Nigerian Law School, former Dean Faculty of Law, Babcock University, Professor Bankole Shojifo. After Professor Shojifo, we also have the opportunity to listen to another intellectual giant and a leading scholar in the field of
intellectual property. That is Professor Adebambo Adewoko, Senior Advocate in Nigeria. So as I leave the floor for these two scholars who I know knew Prof for a much longer time than I did and would have much more to say, please accept my condolences, Mama Shyllon and the entire Shyllon family. We know that Prof will be sorely missed, not just by the family, but by the community of scholars in intellectual property, African law, cultural property, and so on. He was an erudite scholar, very versatile, giant in all the areas where he made his mark. His versatility, his brilliance, and particularly his mentorship, great mentoring role, will be sorely missed by us all. Pray that the Lord will be with the family and that it will be well with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you. Professor Shodipo will continue the tribute on behalf of NATRI, and thereafter Professor Adewoko. Thank you.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, particularly the family of our father and leader and mentor, Professor Shyllon. You've heard a lot about the impact that your father has made locally and internationally. And I want to say that for us to talk today about the impact he's made is not enough. I think we must determine that we must live like him to impact the world around us the same way. One, mentorship and helping others, not looking down on others. I've known him since the late 80s, just after the copyright law was passed and the Copyright Council was set up, and we worked on a number of committees together, and then we always exchange notes about developments. He was a very in-depth researcher who did not leave stones unturned, and so we were always exchanging developments. A case has just been decided on this. What are your views and so on? And so in I think it was about 2004, about 2004-05, when his book on intellectual property that he did after his stint in Max Planck was published, he did not look down and say, "Oh, this is a younger person." He invited me to review the book in Trenchard Hall, and I mean, it was a very interesting experience for me. And for a professor who has been retired for a while to be making an impact locally and internationally, I think it's something which needs to be applauded. Because last year I was on sabbatical to Queen Mary University of London and partly to Cambridge. And at Queen Mary, I was one of the scholars there who was working on art law and said, "Oh, my supervisor in the Netherlands was his external examination was done by one Nigerian. I'll try and find out the name." And she came back the following year and said it was Professor Shyllon. And here was I boasting that, "Oh, of course I'm Shyllon," you know. And the impact that he's had in pursuing cultural property, pushing the frontiers of cultural property and traditional knowledge, it's something which I want to challenge us all. We in the group that Professor Yowumi mentioned, those researchers and teachers in intellectual property, are going to take up the challenge to keep on pushing the frontiers of cultural property, of intellectual property. During my sabbatical last year, I called him from England and said, "Oh, there's this opportunity and so on," and he gave some guidance, which today is leading to the University of Aberdeen and now also the University of Cambridge saying they want to return some cultural property. So I'm challenging us that his work must continue. that it's not enough to just push the frontiers in terms of academic knowledge, but these things must come to bear. Laws must be passed through, laws must be enforced, and we must actually appreciate ourselves and our forefathers in terms of the knowledge that they had, and not to let us look down on our heritage. We need to look at aspects of our culture that we may need to call for changes. The culture that suggests that we shouldn't investigate. Somebody dies and we say, oh, no, it is people from his village. So those things we need to deal with. And so I am, and I want to call on others that what we should do to remember Professor Shyllon is to keep pushing the frontier, keep mentoring people, keep getting opportunities for others to do things in other parts of the world and encouraging them about their future. Mama, Prof will forever be mixed. And I believe, God, that the things he's sown will be reaped by you and your children's children in Jesus' name. Thank you. Professor Adiwopo, SAN.
Thank you, Professor Shodipo. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Mama, and our brothers and sisters, the children of Professor Shyllon. I have, it's with great mixed feelings, really, that I'm doing this, because I didn't think in several years from now I will be in this position, or will be in the position of doing this kind of tribute to Professor Shyllon. But God knows best. Professor Shyllon really was a fine gentleman in the best traditions of legal scholarship in this country. He was evidently a professor of professors with a towering stature. I've heard a lot about him long before I met him. And of course, when we met in the late 80s, early 90s, many years of close relationship followed. That those who knew both of us knew that it was a relationship of father and son. Kindly permit me to continue on the audio mode because of the slight, I'm a bit slightly under the weather. Professor Shyllon personified the attributes of excellence, humaneness, and one you will call a true friend who stuck with you closer than a brother would. I remember in my days in the Copyright Commission, he was an external consultant, an expert person for the commission, and he added a lot of value to the work then. Professor Shyllon defended my cause to the hilt in those days. He defended my cause, and it was absolutely unbelievable to many that he would rise to such an occasion in defense of a gentleman like me. With all his achievements as a scholar of repute and a leader both in the private and public sectors of this country, he remained humble and almost reticent of talking about his accomplishments. It was always helpful to younger colleagues, and this brings to light the point being made by Professor Shodipo about professors like him today who indeed should actually be focused in mentoring our younger colleagues. Professor Shyllon will be remembered by many, many younger colleagues of the impact he made in their lives, and that in itself is a remarkable legacy. He was a brilliant author with a tremendous body of prolific works across sub-disciplines of law, intellectual property, cultural assets, slavery. He was such a prodigious writer and scholar across these fields. He definitely will be fondly remembered in the Nigerian academia and the IP community as a whole. But one thing that I would like to take away from here, and one thing that I will always remember him, is the fact that he was a giant in his generation, clearly a giant in his generation. And that speaks volume to many scholars in this country and what they will be remembered for. Professor Shyllon towers high among his peers, among his generation in this country. And that's why we're all gathered here to remember him. I would like to leave a word of comfort to Mama and the family. Of all the scriptures that has been cited today, one rings very strongly in my heart that I would like to leave with the family. And that is, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. And that there's no stronger comfort than that. Even if we ask Professor Shyllon today to come back, I can assure you that he will not want to come back, because he is in a better place, at peace with himself. But we will continue to miss him physically and, of course, by the family. I pray that his soul continues to rest in the bosom of our Lord. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate the members of the National Association of Teachers is to our great mentor. I'm now up to a family member, Professor Dele of Ibadan.
Thank you, Professor Akintayo. It's such a pleasure to be here, presenting a tribute to your mentor and your supervisor and your teacher. I thank you for inviting the Institute of African Studies. As you know, Professor Shyllon started his career at the Institute. He came over from London, did an LLB and an LLM in 1961, and then came over to the Institute in 1975. I met him when I returned myself from my sojourn in the United Kingdom as a student. I came, and he was a very senior scholar at the Institute. And he was stereotypically British, very calm, easygoing, and he came in and out, very unobtrusive. But you see, deep, calm waters dig deep. He was very calm, but he was very profound. I knew him as a lawyer, but also as a teacher of history. All up by becoming an authority in intellectual property. It was a good thing that he impacted a lot of young colleagues in his own calling, both as a lawyer, a historian, and a humanist. All our colleagues, in fact, Professor Olawale has called me several times this afternoon, asked me how to meet the family. I have very multiple relationships with the family of the Shyllon. Professor Shyllon was our elder and teacher. But I also was lucky to be very friendly with his younger cousin, who's closer to my generation, Engineer Mr. Shyllon, who was the one who actually first sent to my family to say that Professor Shyllon had passed on. It was a rude shock, because a week or so before then, himself and his wife worshipped in church with us. They were seated right at the pew behind me, but we were all masked, and we were seated in church. I was surprised to see him, but he, as usual, was warm and he was friendly. I least expected that he was going to pass on very soon. He had left a legacy with us at the Institute of African Studies, where he worked as a research professor, and then as the foundation dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Ibadan. He impressed those of us who are young and who are up and coming after him, and encouraged us all the time. He also knew that my wife, being an artist, was interested in intellectual property and heritage, and the studies on heritage. And sometimes he will pass ideas and books through me and say, can you give this to your wife as soon as she comes back from Lagos? And I will do so earnestly, and then she will in turn get back to him to say that he had received the books and the publications. He was a fantastic archive and point of reference to us and for all of us. I know that the family and all of us will deeply miss him, will sorely miss him. I appeal to Mama Adiola Shyllon, as well as to Barrister Engineer Yemisi Shyllon and his team, that they should please take heart, because he lived a fulfilled life. He lived a full and fulfilled life. He impacted so many and mentored so many. We're grateful for his life, and we're grateful that he not only made his point, proved his point at King's College London, and he also came home and also made his contributions here, contributions that are indelible. We wish the family and all of us well, and we do hope that his legacies will continue to stand for him in Request Cat in Parky. May he continue to rest in peace, and may light perpetual shine on him. Thank you very much for inviting us and asking us to speak and pay our tributes to him. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming and for honoring his memory. Thank you, Professor Akintayo. I'm done. Thank you so much, Professor Akintayo. I'm done.
So we have musical interlude for like 4 minutes, and then we'll come back. I want to draw attention to the chat section. We find the link to the Forever Missed page, where we can also leave our tributes. it will be possible for us to accommodate everybody at this short program. So I want us to take advantage of the forever missed pay. So we have musical interlude, and then we will resume. I want to appreciate the products of the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan. Faculty, yes, who have had to wait thus far. It's because Professor Shyllon belongs to us. That's the reason that we gave room to other constituencies it belonged to make their presentation earlier. My Lord, senior advocates of Nigeria in the House, and eminent legal practitioners, we shall have our own beat after the musical interlude. Thank you very much, and God bless. Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we are doing the technical and then the volume of the music. I don't know. We resume our deliberation. So, okay.
Oh, I'm back.
Before we invite okay, continuously Taiwo Olawale Taiwo to take the lead in the presentation of former students of Professor Shyllon. Justice Taiwo Otaiwo, apart from being a former student of the Faculty of Law, was also president of the Law Student Society whilst he was an undergraduate. He was vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association before his retirement. Justice Taiwo It's over to you
Yes.
for your.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Professor Antisario, I'm very grateful. Good evening, everybody. I must say I'm very, very elated to be on this platform and to contribute to the tribute to a great teacher, a great mentor, and a father. Nobody knew that Professor Shyllon would always call me anytime he read about any case I decided in the papers. And he would encourage me. At times he would tell me, Taiwo, just go ahead and do what you have to do. I remembered all the times we were in UI with Lee Akitola SAN and Alex Sillon SAN. We were all treated by him as his children. Not forgetting the fact that we were mature children because all of us at that time had a first degree. We had the first degree, in history and politics. So we were all matured. But then we still saw him as a father figure. And he kept faith with us, even up until he passed on. Because I still remember that as close as December, Professor Shyllon still called me to say hello to me and greeted, and he said I should pass on the message also to my wife, Justice Taiwo in Lagos. He was always there for us all, and we will surely miss him. He was a good man. He was a great teacher. He was a lecturer. He was a colossus in the midst of his peers. And I pray that the Almighty God will grant him eternal rest. And of course, the family too, God will comfort them, because it's not easy to lose a close person who has always been with you for a long time. We surely miss him. Thank you all, and I say good evening.
His influence, his leadership, his mentorship. And I was very, very surprised when Prof told me. He said, "Oh no, Yemi, the pleasure was all mine. It was a honor supervising you. You made my job easy for me." Now, as a young lawyer going into the world, especially a woman, I hope I'm not saying the wrong thing when I say, law is a tedious profession. For women, it's even more challenging. Now, for a woman, working in a competitive environment is a Herculean task. But when I left university with Prof, who was a giant, a colossus,
giving me that kind of confidence, telling me what I could do and what I could not do. I didn't feel there was nothing I could do. And along the way in my career, once in a while, I met people that wanted to make me feel as if I didn't know enough. In fact, I remember very well, there was somebody that got given a funny criticism on my work. And the person then asked me, "Oh, Yemi, I hope I'm not making you lose your self-confidence." I laughed. And I told him, "You couldn't possibly." You know what? I worked with a giant of a professor, and he told me that I was good enough. And you know, even today in my career, when I'm in a situation, I have learned to take criticism. I see criticism as a gift. So when you criticize me, I remember the way Prof would just issue his criticisms, critique your opinion. It was in a gentle manner. So no matter what you say to me, I will just learn from it, pick the useful things that I could use. I never see criticism as being about me. I saw it as being about the work. And because I had that attitude to criticism, I saw it as a gift. And it made me a better person. I mean, I'm a better person for that. I think Prof had a very, very, very big impact in my life. And I'm here this evening to say thank you to him. Thank you, Prof, for who you were. I believe that teachers are considered to be the light of, they are the light givers of a society. And when teachers, when they render their services with dedication and the passion with which Prof did this, then in building their students, you then find out that they create students that they have not only taught in academics, they have also built their character. And I think Prof was instrumental in building mine. And even though he's no longer with us today, I thank God for his life. I thank God for the legacy he left behind. My heartfelt condolences go to the family, to Mama Diola Shyllon, to the children and everyone that he left behind. I urge them to weep no more, but to rejoice in the legacy and what people are saying about him. Because ultimately, to live in the hearts of the people we love is not to die. So I say adieu, Prof, till we meet and part no more. Thank you, Professor Akintayo, for organizing this. Thank you for the family for allowing me to speak. Bye-bye, Prof. God bless.
Thank you very much, Yemi Ayalechi. Well, just to remind you that you wrote your long essay on synchronom.
Thank you, Professor Akintayo. Thank you very much.
Okay. May I know if Bola Adebowale Debolex, a member of the family, is online? If Debolex is online, it is his turn to have the floor. While waiting for Debolex, may I invite Umi Yelade to take the floor?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Can we hear me, please? Hello, good evening.
Yes, we can hear you.
That's good. Thank you very much, Professor Akintayo. And I want to really condole with the family at this very point in time. When I received the news of the passing on of Professor Shyllon, I went through all sorts of emotions because just the crossing over the 31st of January 2021, one of my prayer points was for long life, for divine health for Professor Shyllon. And so when I heard that he had passed on, I went through all. Finally, I came to the acceptance that it was time for him to go and rest. He was never really retired. So I thought, well, God really wanted him to rest at this point in time. I met Professor Shyllon, I can't remember exactly what year, but I went through University of Ibadan from 1998 through to 2004 for my undergrad, and then 2012 through 2014 for my master's degree, and thereon. But the first time I met Professor Shyllon, I greeted him, "Good afternoon, sir." And usually when you say hello to lecturers, they go on and just respond and continue. But he stopped and said, "Hello, how are you?" I was shocked because really, lecturers never stopped to say hello. They just respond and move on. So he stopped, and thereon, each time I greeted him, he would stop like that. I actually wondered, I never got to ask him why, but I know that he always stopped to say, hello, how are you? And he taught me jurisprudence in my 500 level. Jurisprudence became so notorious in my house that my youngest brother got the nickname jurisprudence. Each time I was describing him to any of my friends and I mentioned jurisprudence, they knew exactly who it was. It made the class so easy. I don't want to go on about that. The person who spoke class said a lot about that. It was really an honor to be taught by him. So when I was coming in for my master's degree, I met with Professor Akitayo, and we spoke about what I was doing. I was working on my area of practice was intellectual property. And Professor Akitayo told me I would enjoy cultural property if I took it, and I was, okay, no, not a problem. Let me try it. And so the first class, I was sitting in the class, and I saw Professor Shyllon pass by. So I ran outside to say hello. And I greeted him, and he said, Bumi, how are you? This was a person I had not seen in almost 10 years. And he recognized me immediately. He remembered my first name, my last name. I was impressed. And then he came into the class. That was when I realized he was one who was going to teach the class. In the class, it was going on and on from the top of his head. There was no book in front of him. He was dishing it out, all the instruments on cultural property, the history, everything was coming right from the top of his head. And I was just impressed. Let me just use that word, because really at that age, he was already old. And in my head, I'm like, can I ever be like this? Talking from the top of my head without looking at any book. I guess he's done it for so long and he didn't really need any of the books. And he was generous with his material. We didn't have to go all over the place looking for books. He would give us his books, his articles, his everything we needed. And then he would tell the class, I will give all this book to Bumi because she's my daughter and I trust her to keep them safe for me. So whoever needs whatever can approach Bumi for them. So he trusted us with his material and he taught us well. When I was going to write my my master's project, I chose intellectual property because I was already, I love intellectual property. I'd done intellectual property for almost 10 years at that point. And so I'd had it in mind I was going to work on intellectual property. But coming into cultural property law class, I knew there was no way I couldn't abandon my intellectual property, but I had to take cultural property as well. So I combined the two, and he supervised my project. And each time everybody asked me who my supervisor was, and I said Professor Shyllon, they look at me funny, like, sorry. And in my head, I'm like, what is wrong with all of you? This is the best supervisor ever, because he made life easy for me. I didn't have to go chasing. Most of the time, he chased me. He would call, Bumi, I've not seen your work. I've not heard from you for some time. What is going on? How far have you gone? Do you need help? He would call with so much concern. And sometimes, when he found out my father was ill, he would just call simply to ask after my father for no other reason. Hello, Bumi, how are you? How is daddy doing? And I would say, it's fine, thank you, sir. And so, he was a great man. He was a father to me. Let me just say that categorically. And my first glimpse into the man he was as a father was my 200 level class. 200 level, I can't remember if it was an administrative or constitutional law class now. That class was taught by late Professor J.D. Ojo. Olawale will remember this incident, and every other of my classmates that are on this platform right now. Professor Ojo would call on those he knew to ask them questions. And so one day he called Lolade, and Lolade stood there. I can't imagine what was going on because you never can tell who he will call on. And so he called Lolade, and Lolade just stood there and was like, Folarin is burning the midnight candle just to ensure that you have a good life. He's working, he's hard work just to ensure that you are a better person in life, and you are standing there not responding to me. And I have to ask the person sitting to me what Lolade's surname was, and he said Shyllon. And that is a father who was hardworking, who was loving. Each time Daddy and I sat down to talk, and I asked about Yemi. Yemi and I met long before I actually knew Professor Shyllon personally. We're in class 1 together, Christian Law Student Society. So each time I went to see Prof and we spoke, he spoke so fondly of his children, of his grandchildren. He would, let me just use the word brag about his children. A loving father, a great man, a hard-working father. And to Mommy Shyllon, I don't know what to say to you at this moment. I just want to say that may God comfort you on all sides. Each time I went home to see Daddy, Mama would say, Bumi se wani eh? Pele, how are you? How is Daddy? That is how wonderful Mommy made me feel being a student under Daddy. I can't imagine going to my supervisor's house and being rebuffed. Mommy made life easy, very, very easy. She would always say, Bumi, how are you? Sometimes she would speak with me to talk. Mommy, I ask that the Lord Almighty will comfort you, and for the rest of the family, Lolade, Yemi, and everybody, I ask that the Almighty God continue to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bumi Yelade. We have Sheye Ajayi. Sheye Ajayi Ene. Are you on the platform?
I'm here, sir.
Oh, so you have the floor.
Yes, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to speak, to give a tribute to my dear Professor Shyllon. He's a man that I greatly admired. I thoroughly enjoyed taking his class. I was always in awe of his impeccable diction, his impeccable dress sense. You know, he was just a fantastic lecturer. And he also supervised my final year project. You know, when my classmates found out that he was going to supervise me, they were like, you're in trouble, he's thorough. I said, well, I wasn't going to budge, because I was happy to be supervised by someone that, you know, I knew was a great lecturer. And it was seamless. He demanded the best. You know, he didn't, I was friends with Yemi, and he didn't cut any corners for me just because I was friends with his son, who was also in my class. You know, he always, sometimes I would write and he would be like, you need to do some more work, go back, do some more work on this. You know, so he always expected the best and made sure that I gave my best. And it was a fantastic process. And let me just say that he was the best lecturer that I had in my entire time in University of Ibadan. And I speak for myself and my husband. My husband was also our classmate. So we always talk about him being our favorite lecturer. And yeah, he was a great man, and we thank God for his life. And I dare say that you know, when the scriptures say that by their fruits you shall know them, indeed by his fruits we know him, because his children are also great people. They've turned out fantastically well, you know, all doing very well in their fields, in their different fields of study. And and his students too, out of our class, at least I can speak for my set, that passed through Professor Shyllon, turned out some of the best brains that we have in the legal field. So yes, by his fruits we know him, that he was a great man, and he came, he saw, he conquered. So thank God for his life. We bless God for the family that he left behind, and we pray that God will comfort them at this time of their grief and strengthen them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sheye Ajayi Ene. Is Ifeoma Malo?
Sorry, Prof. I wanted
to just
chip in a bit.
Professor Akitayo, Tony wanted to chip in a bit.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Part of your time.
think there's,
So,
there's something technical here that's happening. We can sit here. I don't know if I'm appearing well enough. I'll make mine short. I had the privilege of studying law under Prof, but I missed out on the privilege of knowing him personally. But I would say that just the little that I knew of him, this was one lecturer who impacted me profoundly. Now, one is lectures. You know when this was year one, just coming into law, legal methods. He reinforced in me that I had made the right decision. I was so in awe of how he would balance. If we had space, I'll demonstrate for you the balance on what elbow and reel out the law, speaking, authoritatively, dictating notes without notes for himself. And of course, Shea has spoken about his impeccable dressing. So for me, he captured the total picture of who I wanted to be as a lawyer, as a confident and very knowledgeable in my field. So he made a profound impact to me. We're also friends with PME, and we commiserate at Lola, of course. We commiserate with family in spirit. We trust his soul to our Lord's mercy, and we pray for strength for the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
thank you, Tony and Sheye Ene, for your presentation. As we round up our program today, I want to conclude with this tribute. It's a tribute to an academic mentor and a father indeed. For over 35 years, my academic and work life has been connected with that of Professor Folarin Shyllon. He introduced me to the rudiments of law in October 1985. In my first year of study, he taught two core courses, constitutional law and Nigerian legal system. In the final year, he was my lecturer in jurisprudence and legal theory and administrative law. He administered a faculty my colleagues and I were proud of. He set out to build and develop a law faculty modeled after the best in the world, drawing from his experience as a student at the Faculty of Law, King's College, London. He treated his students as his friends and children, always looking out for their best interests, and gently and tenderly nurturing them to maturity. In my time, he knew all his students by name, and he supported their umbrella organization, the Law Student Society, seeing it as a partner with the faculty. It was not surprising that the Law Student Society conferred on him his honorary life membership on 19 June 1991. His love and interest in me did not terminate with my studentship in UI in 1988. When he learned of my accommodation challenges at the Nigerian Law School, he was willing to assist by going out of his way to inquire if a particular room at his family house at Simpson Street, Ebutemeta, was available for my use. As a law graduate and young legal practitioner, I requested him to write academic references a number of times, and he kindly obliged in his usual generosity and kindness. In 1993, when I joined the Faculty of Law as a law teacher, he was on sabbatical and accumulated leave. When he resumed, he accepted my plea and of others to make the sacrifice to accept to be head of department again. It will appear that he had resolved not to be involved in university administration again after his 7-year service as Dean of Law from 1984 to 1991. He gave form and shape to the structure of departments in the Faculty of Law. Under his tutelage, I began to discharge my full duties of teaching, research, and service. I served as examinations coordinator. When I was sub-dean, and he was standing in for the acting day for 6 weeks. He exposed me to faculty administration. I benefited from his administrative acumen, sagacity, and proactive approach to issues. He will come from home with leaves from his Nigerite writing pad, listing out things that needed to be done for the efficient running of the faculty and the LLB program. Give Honorable Justice Kayode Esho a year's notice to deliver a public lecture whilst he was dean. The late judge and juries told this story repeatedly. The time he acted for the acting dean also coincided with when the Faculty of Law was asked to organize a conference on the 1995 draft constitution for universities in the Southwest. He was on hand to guide me in my capacity as the chairman of the planning committee. He was a master conference planner who had successfully organized a major conference on chieftaincy system in Nigeria at the Institute of African Studies, a conference on environmental law, which was the Faculty of Law's contribution to the UI at 40 celebrations in 1988, and the annual conference of the Nigerian Association of Law Teachers, of which he was president in 1990. Professor Folarin Shyllon was many things to me. I learned under his feet like Paul under Gamaliel. It is therefore not surprising that I've views coalesce at many points, though he will not attempt to blur areas of sharp contrast. Rather, he will accommodate my divergent views. It was a pleasure to be his junior lecturer in jurisprudence and legal theory, legal method, and lately cultural property law, a field of law that gave him fame and name as Africa's leading scholar. Versatility of legal training by venturing into Black history and race relations, making indelible marks and attaining global recognition in those fields of learning through his landmark books. I am happy I was privileged to serve as his research assistant in so many recent intellectual endeavors, and as his personal assistant on many projects. He found in me an agent, friend, colleague, academic mentee, and a son all rolled into one. He was a considerate and compassionate mentor, and a meticulous and caring supervisor with extraordinary readiness to assist. He was available, accessible, and kind-hearted to all his students and junior colleagues. I found in him a cheerleader, giving support and encouragement to every enviable endeavor. Every minute spent with him was a time well spent. Every encounter with him added value. Those who lacked the courage to get close to him considered him extremely quiet. Those who are close to him acknowledged he was an engaging communicator. Sessions with him discussing law, governance, history, and international relations, etc., were inspiring and illuminating. His commitment to scholarship was for life. Even in retirement, he remained prolific and highly productive as a scholar and administrator. When ASU needed to go to court to protect the contracts of employment of our members, and I volunteered my service as counsel, he was thoroughly pleased. When I showed interest in bar politics, he watched me rise steadily through the ranks to be chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association by the branch. He honored my invitation to attend a bar meeting in November 2019 and gave a talk on cultural heritage and law. I am happy to echo his words that God bless him in retirement more than while he was in service. He declared publicly that he knew no other business apart from writing. God blessed him and made him a channel of blessings to many generations. He was generous with his time, talents, and treasures. I recall he gave me money, foreign currency, when I made my first academic trip outside Nigeria. Quite recently, as a father, he extended his hand of support to my family on several occasions during the last protracted industrial action. I can go on, but let me stop here. Adieu, Professor Folarin Olawale Shyllon, a worthy academic mentor and father indeed. May I now invite Mr. Onyola Shyllon, to, on behalf of the Shyllon family, take the vote of thanks.
Okay. Sorry, I was on two devices, but now I've resolved it to just one. There is a saying that the best impression and the way to be memorable in the minds of people, those you come across, is to work to make sure you make them a better version of themselves than they are when you meet them. This is the story that we have picked up as children, as siblings, as friends. Thank you. On behalf of the family, I want to thank all of you for joining us to celebrate the life of my father. Today is the first of two, or I guess 3 days, where we would have the opportunity to celebrate him. Website where we would encourage you to put in words that you're unable to share now. We also offer that request because many of you would like to share your thoughts, but unfortunately we didn't have the time to get through all of you. I know my father played an important role in all your lives. I can say confidently that everybody has a special look forward to reading this. And on behalf of my siblings, we look forward to receiving them in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. Our dad left us with many joyful moments in all our lives, and we're grateful he extended this to you as well. We give you our love. Thank you so much. I will pass it on to Professor Akintayo.
Thank you very much for being part of this celebration. We want to thank Folarin, Shyllon, Mrs. Ifueko Omogui Okaru, the president of Korean 60, Kayode Shoderu. And certain very constitutive who was undergraduate student at that time. But we were taught and we feel highly honored to have passed through the tutelage of this great man. As we continue on Thursday with the Wake and Service of Sons, which we are encouraged to join through the various platforms, and also the funeral service on Friday. Well, as we leave, we want to thank the Fixers organization for hosting this program, Mr. Gbenga Oluniyi for being the linksman. We appreciate friends of the Shyllons. Thank you, Mr. Gbenga Oluniyi. We also want to thank our daddy, Professor Ibi Ajayi, who was part of this program. We thank our daddy, Mr. Dapo Shyllon. We'd like to see you. Adigbega Itade Adewumi, Professor Shyllon's children. Miss Magali, Yaboyade Adija Olawale. We want to appreciate all of you. I can't mention everybody by name. And to our sister, Larry Shyllon. Glad to make the sacrifice to be part of this event. Luki Oche of the Faculty of Law, Grace Omotosho, Oluseun, Mr. No Oluwapo Akitayo. Thank you for joining us. God bless you all. No.
God bless you. My mind is well. It is well. Oh.
Thank you.
It is well. It is well. Orúkọ Jésù.
Àmín o.
It is well. It is well.
Lọ́ládé. Mọ́mí ẹ̀rọ mà. Gbẹ̀ngà ni mà. Yes ma. Yes ma. Ẹ̀rọ mà. Bẹ̀rẹ̀ mà. Yemi, how are you?
Yemi, this is Yemi. Yemi, it is well, oh. Well. God bless you. It is well, Yemi. God bless you. It is well. It is well. It is well. It is well. God will comfort you. God will uphold you. They have spoken so well about you that and it so well. God will keep all of you. God will keep all of you. God will keep all of you. God will strengthen you. It is well.
Okay, Belegbenga.
Yes, ma'am.
Canada ló wà. Àbúrò ẹ̀ ńkọ́ kò sí around.
Kò sí around ma, ó wà lọ́fíìsì.
Ẹ̀pẹ̀lẹ́ mọ́mì, ọmọ yín. Ẹ̀pẹ̀lẹ́ mọ́mì.
Jésù àdúró tì yín o.
Ẹ̀lẹ́. Oh, àmín.
Hello.
Ẹ̀lẹ́ mọ́mì, yes ma.
Ẹ̀lẹ́.
Ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ mọ́mì, mo ń kúrò mọ́mì, dáadáa náà wà ma. Ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ mọ́mì, ẹ ṣé ma, ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ ma. Jésù àdúró.
Èmi ní ló bá wọn bẹ̀rẹ̀. Fọlá ló send the link. Fọlá ló send the link sí mi. Pẹ̀lẹ́. Anyway, you are welcome.
Òṣìbodù. Ó forúkọ ọkọ ẹ̀ sí.
Ó wà ń bẹ̀.
Wọ́n kọ́ tọ́ ni. Mo wá wò ó pé ata ni mo rí.
You are welcome to the club. So ti yí ẹ, àwa senior ẹ rè láti 18 years ago. So you are welcome to the club, my dear fellow. Èmi ò ṣe Ọlọ́run o láti 18 years ago, so don't worry. It is well, pẹ̀lẹ́.
Ẹ̀lẹ́ Bíọ́dún. Bíọ́dún ni.
Hello.
Shyllon. Ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́.
Chief Shoderu.
Ohun yẹn mo ti gbọ́ ohun yẹn. Ọ̀dọ́ mi ò rojú yín.
Má ṣe ìgbẹ́ tó palẹ̀ mọ́. Ọ̀dẹ́ Kristi àdúró ti gbogbo programs tó dẹ̀ kú.
Ẹ ṣe ẹ̀kọ́ ẹ̀náwó sí o. Ẹ ṣe gan-an. Ẹ ní fi irú ẹ̀ gbá o. Kí lẹ wí?
Kí ló yín kọ́ ń bẹ̀ oyin?
Oyin. Chief Shoderu béèrè. Ẹ kúrọ̀lẹ́ sà.
Rọ̀lẹ́ oyin gbẹ̀lẹ́ kúṣẹ́ o, kúṣẹ́ ńlá tó ń ṣe yìí o. Gbẹ̀lẹ́.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Àmín sà.
Ẹ̀yin dáàdì yẹn á dá o.
Ẹ má jẹ́
àmín sà. Mo bèrè àgbẹ̀ yẹn láti ẹ̀ dárúkọ o.
Àmín sà.
Kékeré lórúkọ Jésù.
Àmín.
Bàbá yẹn á túbọ̀ jèrè gbogbo. Àmín yẹn á túbọ̀ ṣojú ẹ o.
Àmín.
Ẹ kálẹ́ mà. Mọ́mì.
Hello.
Mọ́mì. Ẹ kálẹ́ mà, ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ mà.
Ẹ ǹlẹ́ o, ta ló ń kí mi o?
Mrs. Shoderu ló ń kí yín mà.
My sister.
Shoderu, à ń kọ́ ní program ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ mà.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ẹ ṣe dùn. Ẹ ṣe.
Dúró tù ú. Gbogbo ṣe àwọn ọmọ yẹn á dojú ní lórúkọ Jésù. Jésù Kristi àdúró tì yín o. Ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ mà. Ẹ ń lọ mà. Wọ́n ní pé kí ni
ẹ ṣe.
Ẹ fẹ́ bá Aima sọ̀rọ̀.
Mo fẹ́ bá sọ̀rọ̀. Báwo ni mo ṣe lè bá sọ̀rọ̀?
She's there. Aima.
Aima.
You may have to talk to her separately. She's on mute. So, but thank you so much, everyone. We would be leaving very soon, and we would see you on Thursday and Friday.
COVID yìí try gbogbo nǹkan tó block.
Mommy, God is your strength. Ekwele. I'll pray later.
Hello, Tunde. Just, Mr. Tunde Jala, hello.
Hello, Tunde.
He's on.
Hi, Mr. Jala.
Tunde.
Unmute yourself.
Unmute.
I don't think he can. He would have.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Put it back.
Pẹ̀lẹ́ máa o.
Hello.
Ẹ kalẹ́ mọ́ mi.
Àmọ́ rí pé ẹ̀kẹ́ ti yọ díẹ̀. Ẹ̀kẹ́ yọ díẹ̀.
Ìyàwó mi tọ́jú mi.
Ó jẹ́ pá fún mọ́.
Mo ṣe jẹ́ o.
Kò lè tó ti tẹ́lẹ̀. Kò lè tó ti tẹ́lẹ̀.
Ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ o, ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ ti dáde o. Ẹ̀mílọ́lá. Ọlọ́run máa comfort everybody o lórúkọ Jésù.
Àmín.
Máa strengthen everybody lórúkọ Jésù. That was a massive colossus. Lade was saying when we tell a lot of things until she started, hearing people talk about him today, and just shows how humble he was. Ẹlòmíì gan tí o achieve tó báyìí wọ́n máa pariwo káàkiri, but he's just so humble. It's just a measure of the kind of person he was that achieved so much and didn't make so much noise about it. It is well with you all in the name of God. God will lengthen our days in the name of Jesus. God will perfect everything that concerns us in the name of Jesus. Amen. It is well with us, Olórúkọ Jésù. Ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́, mo kàn ní kí n ṣe é lónìí, ó dọ̀la o. Ó dàbọ̀.
Àtàlẹ́ mọ́ mi. Ẹwà mute.
Yẹmi báwo ni?
Fine, thank you, sir.
Hello? The one is gone by.
Wàá rí nǹkan tí mo kọ́ ń pa ẹ̀.
Oh, you've heard it already.
There's nothing.
You've heard it already.
Mo sọ, wàá rí.
Ẹ̀mílọ́lá.
Ẹ kalẹ́ mà. Oyin, hello. Ẹ kalẹ́ mọ́ mi.
Ẹ̀lẹ́ kí náà ń pè kíní orí ẹ̀ yìí o.
Kí ni ẹ mà? Ṣé irun mi? Oh.